Todd Bodine, a young, up-and-coming driver with a world's worth of potential. Tabasco, an established sponsor willing to invest adequate resources to fund a successful race team. A new team owner and an organization featuring several experienced veterans, including team manager and tire changer Jeffrey Baker from what had once been TriStar Motorsports. It all fell apart in record time. But for Baker, at least, the Tabasco fiasco had a positive and life-changing outcome. From the outside looking in, on paper, this seemed to be the perfect situation.
Mark Smith had worked out a deal to buy the shop and the property that used to be King Racing and Kenny Bernstein and Quaker State and Larry Mack and all those guys, Richard Broom, Ricky Rudd, all those guys. So we end up there, and we're doing what we can to survive. And this ownership group approaches us and says, "Hey, we want to go NASCAR racing. We've got a sponsor. Would you be willing to listen?" And I don't begin to understand all the ins and outs, but a group by the name of ISM out of Indianapolis approached us and says, we've signed Tabasco as a sponsor. And Rick, I'll tell you, we're talking towards the end of 1997. And as best I understand it, and Todd Bodine and Pat Trice and Mark Smith, if he was still alive, could probably tell you maybe better than I could. But that sponsorship was in the neighborhood of $8.2 million a year. And if my recollection is correct, there were only two sponsorships in the garage at the time that were larger. And that was Goodwrench with RCR and DuPont with Rick Hendrick. We thought we'd hit the big time. All this hard work for 11 seasons, this is great. If you'll recall, and if I'm not telling it wrong, I think in 97, RCR took a car to North Wilkesboro that was designed and built, the chassis, by Pratt and Miller. And Big E went up there and waxed everybody's tail. Well, somehow or another, this group had talked Pratt and Miller into building our chassis for us for the 98 season. And it was going to be an exclusive deal. Nobody could get those chassis. Pontiac was going to be a manufacturer sponsor. There was a guy in the business back in the day named Cecil Tipton. He used to have a independent body hanging business. And these Pontiacs, he and his crew were going to hang the bodies on these cars. And when they showed up at our shop, it was going to be a brand new chassis with a brand new body on it. We were going to do the paint and body work. We were going to build our own motors, which we had done since the inception of TriStar. And it was just going to be awesome.
Over and above the financial backing the team was supposed to receive, the personal relationship with the Tabasco company seemed to be everything anybody involved could have hoped for.
And we actually got to fly down to McElhaney. I say McElhaney. McElhaney is the family name of the folks that owned Tabasco, Paul McElhaney and his family. We flew down to Avery Island, where Tabasco was. And you talk about some of the nicest people you ever want to meet. Like I say, a family-owned business. They were intrigued by NASCAR because of France family. Because of, there were so many families, whether it was Petty's or Allison's or Waltrops, whatever the case may be. And then they got intrigued with the Bodine name and found out that Todd Bodine was available. And we signed what we thought was a, big time name crew chief and Pat Trice. And I mean, we had the world by the tail. This is going to be great. This is awesome. All our dreams are going to come true.
There was only one problem. There was already a storm brewing just over the horizon. For Baker, one of the first signs of the trouble that was to come took place during a test session at North Wilkesboro.
One of the other caveats to the deal was we were going to have a test team. You guys, you're on the road so much, we're going to give you a little break. We're going to have a test team come in and do all the testing. Well, this test team shows up at Rockingham, and I'm like, gosh, there's a couple of these guys that are here, and they were observing our process. I'm like, Rick, I'm thinking these guys, some of them are familiar, and I just can't place them. And as it turned out, the guy that was going to be the lead of the group, I guess kind of the crew chief, his name was Mitch Davis. Well, Mitch Davis was a crew chief for Jack Roush and his sports car team. You know, the Mustangs and stuff that he had out there. I think Wally Donnebeck had driven some of them. And I'm like, wow, okay, that's interesting. And then there was this little short fellow that Bob Hancher was the lead guy of this ISM group. After we got done with our test, he goes, look, I want to put this youngster in the car and let him take a few laps just to get him familiar with stock cars. And it was like, okay, stock cars, what does that mean? That kind of a slip of the tongue right there. But he looked familiar. And as it turned out, his name was Jeff Ward. He was a motocross champion. And I'm like, okay, this is not making a whole lot of sense. Well, after the fact, and Todd was just beside himself. He goes, look, you're not going to put a rookie driver in my car that we just got dialed in at Rockingham, which is a driver's racetrack. It is hard to get around this place. And to get a rookie out there and mess up this car, no, we're not going to do that. Well, Bob was the boss. You know, he kind of had the control of things, even though Mark Smith was the owner. And he gets out there, makes a few laps, and he does, you know, respectable, but, you know, he's not in the same ballpark as Todd. But anyway, we get back and we do a little homework and come to find out Jeff Ward was an IndyCar driver. Mitch Davis was his crew chief.
Baker told Mark Smith during the 1997-98 offseason that he would be looking for another job, but added that he wouldn't leave until after Daytona. Within just a few days, Baker lined up an offer to serve as the tire specialist for Jeremy Mayfield at Penske Cranafis Racing. It was to the penny what he had been making as team manager at ISM. Jeffrey Baker was set. All he had to do was get through Daytona.
Prior to the season starting, the Pratt & Miller deal never came through. The deal with Cecil Tipton, hanging our bodies, never came through. All of a sudden, there were cars showing up that were Pontiacs, but they were painted green and yellow and had a number 97 on them. I'm like, okay, that's interesting. It was Chad Little's old Pontiacs from Roush. I don't know if they were switching to Ford at the time or not, but I'm like, you got to be kidding me. You know, and nothing against Jack Roush and those guys, but that stuff didn't really ever run that well. And I'm like, you got to be kidding. Our stuff, I think, would run better, but we never ended up with all those things we were promised. Now, Pontiac, you know, stayed true, and they gave us body parts and engine parts and things of that nature. But we go to Daytona. We didn't do very well in the clash. And then we go to the qualifying races. And, oh my goodness, we didn't make the Daytona 500. We're done. Well, that was disappointing because all of the, you know, hoopla, you know, Tabasco's coming to town. It's going to be a big to-do and blah, blah, blah.
For Jeffrey Baker, at least, there was a silver lining.
Paul Andrews comes up to me in the garage area that Thursday and goes, hey, you suggested to me that you would see him through Daytona. I said, you're right. He goes, well, I don't mean to be cruel, but Daytona's over, right? I said, what you got in mind? He goes, well, are your rooms good for the rest of the weekend? I said, well, you know they are. He goes, well, if you'll stay, I'll put you on Rusty's plane going back home, if that'll suit you. I said, well, gosh, Paul, that'd be pretty awesome. I said, it beats the 15-passenger van I rode down on. So, yeah, I'll be glad to go back in Rusty's plane. And so we changed clothes overnight, showed up Friday morning. First day on the job was Friday the 13th. And here I'm wearing red, white, and blue and mobile, and I'm just blown away. Paul Andrews comes to my hotel that next morning, picks me up, and we go to the racetrack. And they got a youngster. I can see now why he wanted a tire guy. They had a youngster that just, his heart wasn't in it, and he just didn't really care. So we kind of just observed, you know, for the first couple of days. And then here come the Daytona 500. I'm thinking, man, this is unbelievable. I've made it. Rick, I've made it. Yeah. I'm big time Penske Cranafis number 12, Mobile One, Jeremy Mayfield. This is unreal. And we ran great that day. It was absolutely awesome. Rick, I got emotional there towards the end because I'm thinking, oh my goodness, my first race with a big time organization, and we're going to win this bad boy. It's going to happen.
Unfortunately for Jeremy Mayfield, Baker, and the rest of the 12 team, Dale Earnhardt had other plans. The Intimidator finally won the Daytona 500 that year. It was the storybook finish of all storybook finishes for everybody except Jeffrey Baker.
Well, emotions get you sometimes. I was in tears thinking we were going to win. Then I was irritated. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. And I like Rick Mess. He's a great guy. But I'm like, we were going to win this doggone thing. There was nothing in my heart that was going to change my mind. And then you see all these cats get out on pit road and they're going to shake Dale Earnhardt's hand because he's finally won it. My hand stayed in my pocket. I was like, I ain't shaking his hand. Doggone it, that should have been our Daytona 500.
Nearly 28 years later, Jeffrey Baker is still with Penske Racing. He's won championships, numerous races, Indianapolis 500s, and walked alongside Roger Penske. And he's got the Tabasco fiasco to thank for it.